Welcome to Aussie Job Seeking. My name is Jacob Green, your host today. I have around 10 plus years experience in recruitment, so I want to share my knowledge and experience with you to help you build up your resume. So I have my friend's resume here today. He's been running his own business for the last 10 years, so he really hasn't had a need to have a resume for a very long time. So the resume he's provided to me is really lacking, but I feel like there's a good opportunity that we can spruce it up, zhuzh it up into a new template, and then you can check the difference between the two. So let's jump straight into it. Let's have a look at the resume in its current format. So if we have a look, it is actually a combination of the cover letter and the resume together, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I would suggest having them as two separate files because a lot of jobs that you apply for will ask for two separate attachments. So I would recommend just splitting them and saving them as two separate files. And then we get to the resume itself. So again, he's put his full address, which is not needed. Simply put your suburb, state, and postcode. He's got his mobile number and his email address, perfectly fine. Good to have it at the top. As we can see, he's put his date of birth on his resume. Now, if he was a teenager applying for his first retail or hospitality role, then having a date of birth to prove that he meets the minimum age requirements is probably a good thing to have on his resume. But aside from that, you shouldn't really ever have your date of birth on an Australian resume unless there is a specific reason for an age requirement for that role. And that would typically be in something like modeling or acting. But for 99% of the roles out there, date of birth is not going to be required. While you're at it, make sure you don't put ethnicity or any other personal details like that because it's just not necessary for your application. Now we can see he's written a career objective and it is highlighting a few key kind of skills and a little bit about himself. However, what it's missing is it's failing to address what a career objective is really about, which is to paint a picture about who you are, the value you bring, and where you're going moving forward. So we will play around with that when we get to the final template. In terms of key strengths and skills and personal attributes, he's created a bit of a long list, dot-pointed long list, and as we can see, it's actually filled the remainder of his first page. And that's a little bit worrying to me because I believe the first page is your hero page. This is the page that will really show off who you are. And if the first page doesn't pop and hit all the points that the recruiter or the person looking after the job is looking for, then it's unlikely that they'll go to the second or third page. So it's really important to have your first page, the hero page, with all the important details. So keep that in mind when we start building out his new resume. Now he's got a list of qualifications on the next page, all mainly within the retail space and the food safety space, which makes sense as he was a business owner of a restaurant, a multi-chain restaurant. So I think these are some useful qualifications and we'll probably want to highlight them on the first page as well. Then we can see he's been a business owner for the last 10 years, as I mentioned, and he's got some responsibilities listed here. What I don't see is any specific key achievements. And key achievements is really an opportunity to say not just what you've done in terms of duties and responsibilities, but actually what value did you bring in that position and in that company. As he was the owner, I'm sure he's done a lot of amazing things, but he just might not specifically be thinking about all those experiences across the 10 years. So get a pen and paper, have a think, write down at least 2 to 3 key achievements for your current or most recent role. Now, as we can see below, he's got 2 other work experiences, a storeman and a kitchen hand. And these 2 roles are less important, so we don't really need to show them off quite so much. We'll keep them short and sharp and not focus on them too much. But definitely as an owner, for 10 years, we need to bulk that up with some achievements. And now if we scroll down to the 3rd page of the resume, which is the 4th page in this case, because he's got the cover letter as the front page, we can see that he's listed some languages. I speak English, Indonesian, and basic Chinese Mandarin. Now he's actually fluent in English, he grew up here. However, it is also great to have additional languages. but I think that we can display that a little bit more easily by combining it with the personal interests. So let's do that in the final resume. He's listed some interests, and this is a tricky part of your resume because you need to decide for yourself whether you want to include personal interests or not. It's not a requirement, and some people will say to keep it off. Most definitely keep it off. But I think it's nice to have in there as long as it doesn't detract from your possibility of getting the role. And what I mean by that is if you've listed a personal interest on there that maybe goes against the role that you're applying for. So keep in mind what personal interests you list in there. Try and keep it a little bit basic and not too over the top. And if it's going to push your resume to be an extra page, then consider whether you want to include it or not. Finally, he's got a list of 3 different referees, and whilst it is good to have it on your resume, especially if you're applying for administration, reception, and customer service roles, which is what he is applying for, then having referees is quite useful. If you're applying for more corporate positions, it's less necessary to have it on your resume. And in fact, even if you go through the interview process, are successful, you'll often be asked for your referees once again, even though it's already on your resume. So I don't think people really see the value in having it in there, but if it's not going to take up too much space, then you can keep it on your resume. So this is the template I've chosen for my friend's resume. As you can see, it's still got the contact details, but it's really nicely tugged up to the top. That way it's not taking up too much space, and it just looks a little bit nicer and a little bit neater. Now I've chosen blue as the secondary color just to offset the black. Just having black text only can be a bit much on the eyes, so the blue will help to break that up a little bit. And the first section that I've got there once again is the career objective. So I'm just going to write a little bit of a career objective, and then you can have a bit of a read of that. There we go. So I've added that career objective. I've kept it quite simple and basic. He may choose to reword this a little bit. I do think there's opportunity for improvement, but I think as a basis, it's a good start to have in there. It lists a bit about his background experience and a little bit more about what he's looking for moving forward. Now, as he's looking for a role as a receptionist, administration, customer support, he's looking at a lot of different options, and it may be easiest for him and for yourself to save a separate template for each of those job types. That way you don't have to keep rejigging that section of it, and you can just keep it and update what you need to. Now I've added his key skills, which are a bit of a combination of his key strengths as well as his personal skills and attributes, and I've listed them. I have cut it down a little bit shorter and tried to focus on what are the main things that would be a good thing to have for a receptionist, administrator, customer support. You need to have a think about what's best for your resume and what you want to highlight. Having a list with 30 different skills on there is going to detract from your resume, so make sure that you're choosing only the ones that are going to be most beneficial for the role that you're applying for. So I've added his most recent role as a business owner. Again, I've kept it kind of short and sharp and not overly detailed, but enough detail to give an insight into what he was doing, what he was responsible for. And most importantly, he's going to have to add some key achievements to really bulk it up and show that value. I've also moved the qualifications from the second page onto the first page because, as I mentioned, the hero page is the most important page, and we want to make this first page really shine with the most important details. So I've added the remaining 2 roles onto his resume onto this second page. I've kept it really short and sharp, not too overly detailed because, again, that most recent role is the more important role. I've also combined his language experience with his personal interests, again, just to save a bit more space and to keep it a bit more contained. And I've also cut down the referees section to be structured a little bit differently to save on space. So as you can see, we've been able to fit all the remaining details of the resume on this second page alone without having to creep over into a third page. For the type of experience that he has, there's really no benefit or need to go into a third page. I think this is well and truly showing off what he needs to within the 2 pages. Now he can definitely invest more time to help bulk up some of the writing, some of the value that you can bring, some of the key achievements. And that's the thing with a resume, is it's never ending. You're going to be continually building it up, investing your time and adding new skills and new things into it as you go. But I really think that it's a very obvious difference between the original and the new. And I'm keen for your thoughts, whether you think there's a good improvement between the two. And I really hope these tips have helped you in your resume writing as well. I've got some further videos on resume building that will be able to help you whilst you're writing it, as well as if you connect with me on my socials, happy to chat, happy to run through your resume and hopefully bring some more value. But for now, happy hunting. All the best. Cheers.